You're listening to Learning Leader Spotlight, interviews with corporate L&D leaders. On each episode, we sit down with key industry experts to discover more about what's happening in the world of learning and development, from current trends and insights to the most valuable lessons learned along the way. Join us for a fresh perspective on all things training and the best direction forward. Here's your host, Leigh Langford.
Hi, welcome to Learning Leader Spotlight, the podcast where we interview the learning leaders of today to help the learning leaders of tomorrow. I'm your host, Leigh Langford. I'm the president of TrainingPros. TrainingPros is an L&D contract staffing company where we like to say, when you have more projects than people, let us find you the consultant to start your project with confidence. I'm really excited today because today I am interviewing a friend and a colleague here at TrainingPros. It's Leigh Hurst. She is a longtime relationship manager with TrainingPros. Welcome, Leigh.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for inviting me to do it.
I'm just thrilled to get to interview you and let our listeners learn a little bit more about you. Can you share a little bit about your background in learning and development before you joined TrainingPros?
Sure. Yeah, it's hard to believe it's been over 30 years in learning and development. Like when I say that, I'm like, oh, how did that happen? My background in learning and development started, even in undergrad. I took an instructional design class as part of my corporate communications degree. And then I just became interested in behavior change and specifically the use of media for behavior change. So I sort of pursued graduate school right after undergrad and then got a job at Accenture, where I worked for about 7 years, both in an internal capacity at their corporate university, which is right outside of Chicago. So I was developing curriculum for new consultants and different lines of business that would come to the corporate university to be trained, which was a super fun job. And then through that work, I became really interested in simulation, use of simulation for learning. And so I started doing more work in that space. And then I was invited to go to Northwestern University, which is where all of that work was coming out of at the time, through a partnership with Accenture. And I studied under Roger Schenck, who's passed now a couple years ago, but he is considered the father of AI. So it was the early days of looking at how AI can be used for smarter feedback in systems, different ways that the simulations can branch in a smarter way than just black and white sort of thing. And so that's really where I've spent the majority of my career, has been in technology-based learning, specifically simulation-based learning. And then after leaving Accenture, I worked both in Chicago and then the Philadelphia office in their change management practice, did a lot of work with pharma and some other industries. I ended up working for several startup companies, helping them launch their online offerings. So I would join a company that maybe largely had instructor-led training, and they wanted to sort of pivot and offer additional content or separate content that was online so that people who attended the instructor-led seminars and so forth could then also have follow-up online content. So so I did that. And then I also worked for a few decades or 20 years about doing some nonprofit work for an organization I started, which was focused on behavior change as well. So it sort of spanned different aspects of both corporate and nonprofit. And then I've done some teaching at the college level, at the master's degree level as well in L&D. So I've had my hands in a little bit of everything before I landed at TrainingPros, and I just love it here. I love being a relationship manager, and I feel like it's a great way to put all of that history and different aspects of L&D to work, both for our clients and our consultants. So,
fantastic. So it's good to hear about what you were up to before you came and started working with us. I think it's been probably about 7 years ago you joined with us at TrainingPros.
I think it was 2019. So yeah.
Okay. And, you really just within a very short period of time became very successful with us. What did you enjoy most about being a relationship manager at TrainingPros?
I really love working with clients, getting to know their initiatives, their programs, the things they're trying to get off the ground for L&D and thinking about it strategically and how I can partner with them. I feel like my best client relationships are those that really operate in that space, more of a partnership. I feel like part of their planning team, they ask for advice, and sometimes what they come to me with isn't exactly like after we talk about it and I provide some options for different ways they might be able to achieve that goal. Sometimes we decide to approach it in a different way, whether it's because of budget, because it makes more sense to use a different skill set. So I really enjoy that there's sort of a consultative aspect to being a relationship manager. It's not just transactional in terms of just like a straight recruiting role. It really is that collaborative piece. I think that brings a lot of value because that, as obviously, all the relationship managers come with a ton of L&D experience. So we're not just there to take orders. We're there to really understand the business, the learning and development goals, and to really be of service to our clients to make sure that we're finding them the right resources.
I agree with you. So, for anyone who doesn't know, I was a relationship manager with TrainingPros as well for a few years. And one of my favorite things was getting to peek behind the curtain of company after company after company and seeing what it is that each company is doing. I felt like it gave me such a bigger understanding of L&D as a whole, because I wasn't just single focus vision on the one company I was working at. I got to see all these different companies.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like some of the larger global companies that we work with are doing such cutting edge innovative work that, is not only interesting from an L&D perspective, but I really think it's trying to create a different way of working, a different environment within large companies that allow people to be more their whole selves. It allows people to create a stronger relationship with their managers. And essentially, at the end of the day, they're creating a more enjoyable work environment where people can really excel in all different kinds of ways. And it feels good to be a part of that, to be supportive of those types of things.
That's great. So one of the aspects of your role as a relationship manager is working closely with our consultants. We have a huge, deep consultant pool. And we, as relationship managers, we really get to know those consultants and know what their strengths are, where they are going to work the best, all that. What's been the most surprising or rewarding part for you working with the consultants?
I love that part of it. I really do. I think from a business standpoint, the thing I love about it most is that we are able to open up doors to work that I think would be nearly impossible for an independent contractor to get on their own. So when you're working with global companies, that most of them will not contract directly with an individual. And so by working through TrainingPros and with any of our relationship managers, I feel so good when I feel like they're getting to do work that is really interesting. And it's work that will help, their whole career, basically, because they're learning about all of these things through that opportunity. And that feels really good. And then just knowing them personally, like I love learning more about who they are as a person, their families. And it feels good knowing that we're providing the kind of work that allows them to balance whatever it is they want to balance in their life, and that they trust us for that. They know that the work they get through TrainingPros is quality work. They know that we will have their back and go to bat for them if anything comes up where it requires us to sort of step in. And clients feel the same way, by the way. But that part of it feels really good. I feel like I'm really helping people both professionally and supporting them personally too.
I love to hear these kind of stories, and working with the consultants is extremely rewarding, like you're saying. I know you've helped a few of them get Brandon Hall Group awards, and you've definitely helped bring light to, you've worked with a consultant, found them to be great, and then suddenly everybody in the company is putting the same consultant to work because Leigh recommended them. And that has to feel good to see that you're able to help this consultant suddenly like elevate their consulting career.
Yeah, and sometimes when somebody's new to consulting, it might be the first time that they're doing consulting work, whether they left a full-time role or they're just going to give it a try. A lot of that type of interaction is about getting them comfortable doing consulting, talking to them about some of just the practical sides of what it means to be a consultant, to help them, dip their toe in the water and become an experienced consultant that we can use a lot more. I like that part too.
That's great. I love it. I always say one of my favorite parts of being a relationship manager was I got to help people. I got to help a consultant get work. I got to help a client do a project, and I got paid for that.
Yeah.
Or it'd be better.
It really, the truth, that is exactly how I feel, for sure.
So what qualities do you see in our consultants and that make clients want to work with them again and again?
I think the biggest thing I see for consultants that get put to work a lot are characteristics like being flexible, because a lot of times we're plugging in. I mean, they're looking for contractors for consultants for various reasons, right? Either they don't have enough people on their team, they need a specialized skill set, and sometimes you're being plugged into a very fluid situation, right? Maybe they're not exactly sure what they need, but they know they need help. And so I think the people that can really operate not only in their expertise within L&D, but also operate as like a true business consultant where they're flexible and can read the client needs and can kind of work with them to adapt the role or the work to be whatever they need. Those people do really well, I think. I think people that have like a deep expertise in a certain area are often, looked at for that reason. People come back because they want somebody who's really deep in leadership development or a certain industry area. And what's great from a training pro standpoint is we have access to all of those people. We can help find the needle in the haystack person that you think, well, that person probably doesn't exist, but they probably do. And we found those people. And so that feels really awesome to be able to navigate through, lots of great candidates, but find that person that has that nuance of combination of skills that's going to meet the needs of the client. So I would say flexibility, professionalism, being proactive in the way you communicate with the client, making sure that you're raising red flags in a timely manner, that you're not operating as an order taker all the time, that you're thinking strategically about the work that you're doing so that you can add value beyond just completing the work, that you're actually adding value in terms of the skills you bring to the table. So the people I see excel most in the roles that I place are people that have those types of characteristics beyond just traditional L&D.
That's going to be very valuable advice we can share with our consultants, I think. So thank you for that, Leigh. From your perspective, what do clients value most about training pros and their relationship with you personally?
Well, I think it's some of what we've already talked about. I think what clients have said to me that they value most is also, as a company, our ability to be fluid and flexible. So when somebody comes to us with a need, they're not even sure if we have that type of thing. They're like, do you do this? Whatever. They know that we will, number one, quickly get back to them, that our responsiveness is really top notch, and that we can quickly navigate to the types of resources they need. So within a day, we can say, look, I'm going to find somebody. I'll send it back your way. Take a look. You're welcome to talk to that person, see if it's the right fit. If it's not, I'll adapt the type of skills I'm looking for. So that, that piece of really trying to understand what they're looking for and being responsive in a quick, timely manner to make sure that they can get started quickly on that project. But then, of course, the piece I talked about already, which is the collaboration, the partnership, and feeling like they're getting almost like an added person to their team, like they're getting another L&D professional that can provide value. That's me, and I'm free. I come with the package, right? So I can work with them however they want me to understand the initiatives, give advice, give suggestions about the types of roles and skill sets that could work for that. So I think they feel like they're really getting deep knowledge of the space of learning and development when they work with us. So that's how I feel personally, and that's the feedback that I've gotten when I talk to clients about why they continue to come back to me and to the company for the types of people we can provide to them.
You're absolutely spot on. I've actually interviewed some of your clients to find out how they like working with us. And they've said a lot of the things you just said about working with you. In addition, one word that came up a lot when I would interview your clients is partnership. They really feel like they have a partnership with you, and they do feel like you are one more member of their team. Do you have a reaction to that word partnership?
I just think it means everything in terms of being successful as a relationship manager. I think without that, you're not operating in a full capacity for what you should be providing to a client. I think without that partnership, you're not invested in what the client's doing in a way that you think about it when you're not working on it, or you want to call them because you have an idea about something. That means that you've sort of breathed in the client's culture. You have a responsibility to provide high quality service to the team that you're working with or the company that you're working with. And I take that really seriously. I want them to feel like they're working with a top-notch professional, that they know when I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And that if there's ever a situation that maybe it just so happens the resource isn't the right fit, that I'm going to make it right, that I'm going to step in and make sure that we adjust so that we can meet the needs that they have. So I think that comes through very clearly with our clients, because the caliber of people that we have working here, I think, is really, really outstanding.
Well, that's fantastic. And of course, everything you're talking about, it just leads to the fact that you have one of the best client retention rates I've ever seen. You keep your clients want to continue to work with you year after year, which says a great deal about your ability to connect with them and provide real value.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm proud of that too. I want them to feel that way. So it's good to see that there's a metric that kind of proves that I'm providing the service that I'm trying to provide. Well,
So as you know from working here at Training Pros, we embrace service and charity. As you know, we plant trees as our charity as a company, but we also encourage people to do um, activities and efforts that give back. And you are really a shining star of that effort. Can you give us a kind of a overview of what your work you do around early detection of breast cancer?
sure. Yeah. So back in early 2000s, 2004, I was diagnosed with breast cancer at a really young age. I was in my early 30s, and no history of breast cancer. At the time, was a marathon runner. So it really came out of the blue. And so when I ended up finally getting diagnosed after finding my own lump, I kind of wondered, like, why did I never pay attention to this? Why is this something that, I've never talked about breast cancer, and I'm educated, I'm health conscious, like what. And so the more I looked at it from a behavior change standpoint, what I realized is that the messaging at the time was very much geared towards older women, because that is who normally gets breast cancer. So it's not wrong that that's the messaging that's out there. But, I learned over time that over 5% of young women, or over 5% of those diagnosed, are women under 40. And so it's not an irrelevant number. And so my thought was, just by simply changing the messaging, making it a little more fun, a little more welcoming and less morbid. So I started an organization called Feel Your Boobies, which at the time was very provocative, and at times still is. But the whole goal of the organization was to find ways to intersect with young women where they were. And we did that through the use of media campaigns. And that was in the early days of social media, where it wasn't pay to play as much as it is now. And so we had several viral campaigns that, went crazy on Facebook in the early days, and they've resulted in saving lives. And so the strategy behind that really came out of my background in learning and development, and how to use media to creatively and innovatively kind of take a message and cancer, breast cancer is not fun to talk about, but find a way to make it a little more tongue in cheek, so that somebody who doesn't need to know all the details about breast cancer, they just need to know that they need to feel their boobies. That's what a 20 something needs to know. And so, yeah, so it was a great a great way of giving back to something that impacted my life and be able to feel like I had the skills to make a difference in the world and to save some people's lives and, impact some other women who did find their lumps, but luckily it wasn't breast cancer. So I'm 22-year survivor now, and it's one of the highlights of my life to be able to do that kind of work.
That's amazing. And of course, you get asked to speak about this often. You've been put on committees. You want to share anything about those, or is that private?
No, yeah, no. Over the years, the work has been recognized nationally, and I've been invited to sit on committees for the CDC. That was a very selective group of people that were put in place to consult with them around how to reach young women. So it was a group of people specifically looking at what are the ways and intervention strategies we can use to reach this population of women. So it was really great to feel like the work had been recognized enough to feel like I had something to offer on a larger scale, on a larger stage. And so I also do keynote speeches, so I get asked to speak a lot. And a lot of times that's not necessarily in the breast cancer space. It's really, even in the corporate lens, it's about navigating adversity and learning about how that can open up doors and getting really in tune with your own internal North Star, I guess is what I would say. And so that really applies a lot in careers, I think, because professionally as women, we juggle a lot. And sometimes it's really hard to say no. And I learned how to say no during breast cancer. There were things I just could not keep on my plate that I didn't want on my plate anymore. There were friendships that were toxic. And so even though it was a breast cancer diagnosis that sort of created those lessons, those life lessons for me, I think they really apply in a much broader way. And so when I speak, it's really more to large groups of women about how to navigate their career by being their own advocate for the things that they care about and that they want and the things that they don't want. And I think a lot of times people resonate with the idea of like making a big change in your life. I was working 6-figure corporate job, and I decided to leave for quite some time to run the nonprofit, which of course is a whole different ballgame in terms of the lifestyle. And I had to make a lot of changes to do that because I cared about it. And so it was the first time I realized that I cared more about the work I was doing than I cared about the salary I was bringing in. And so I think that's a valuable lesson in the corporate context for people that are contemplating maybe leaving their job and going back to school to learn something different, or, leaving a marriage or anything that feels really overwhelmingly scary. But that if you just take one step at a time, sometimes you can get yourself sort of more on a path that feels more in line with your own internal desires and goals in life.
So you have a lot of good messages for women, not just about breast cancer, but changing your life and making sacrifices, and the big one learning how to say no, because that is a problem for a lot of women. We get over, especially when we become working moms and all that. Suddenly, we're just overwhelmed. And I remember that movie. I don't know how she does it. I was like, yes, that's what it's like to be a working mom.
Every day. Yeah.
It's like you don't go to sleep. You lay down and you start going through the lists in your head of all the things you have to do tomorrow.
Right. Exactly. You're a walking list for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So learning to say no is a big one. And maybe taking that stress off would help with the breast cancer as well.
Yeah, exactly. Proactive. Yeah.
But it's fitting that you work now with TrainingPros, which is a certified woman-owned company, and it's mostly women. So I think it's fitting that you do all this work, charity work and speaking and everything for women. So we appreciate that about you, Leigh.
Well, thank you. I think TrainingPros is a great company that allows for the flexibility to do really great, interesting work for professionals. We're all extremely professional people, but it also allows for the flexibility to balance your life and however you choose to do that. If you have kids or sick family members or whatever, this company allows for the flexibility to navigate your life in whatever way you choose to do that. So I'm very appreciative of that. And I love that it's a woman-owned business.
That's great. Yeah, and that's one of the things I loved about when I joined TrainingPros. My kids were in 1st and 3rd grade. And so the flexibility to still be a mom and still be there for them was huge. So
Yeah, and still have a good job. It's nice to not feel like you have to step out of the professional realm to be the type of mom or family member that you want to be, that you can do both. You can find a way to have interesting work, be professional, and still, contribute to your, be present in your family environment.
yes. And that's why we have so many moms in the company.
Yeah.
Well, I know you have been responsible for creating the situation where we planted a lot of trees in the world, but this time we're going to plant 5 trees just for you, Leigh, in your name.
Thank you.
Even though you've been responsible for hundreds of trees getting planted on behalf of the projects you've put together, these trees are just for you as our thank you for being on the podcast today.
Of that. Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. As you know, we've planted over 5,000 trees to date in the world. Our goal is 10,000, so we're halfway there. It should just be a few more years, and we'll have 10,000 planted.
I better get to work.
Oh yeah, get to work. Get a few more hundred planted for us. And that's it for this week's episode of Learning Leader Spotlight. Leigh's been a wonderful guest. We hope you tune in next week to hear from another leader in another industry. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for the latest episode of Learning Leader Spotlight, interviews with corporate L&D leaders. You'll find links in the show notes to any resources mentioned on today's show. If you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe so you never miss an episode and leave us a 5-star review.